Welcome to Energy in Motion, everyone. I am your host, Ra Kalan, and this is going to be an exclusive sitting at home over spring break, chopping it up with Chelsea episode. We haven't really just had a stream of consciousness conversation in a while, so me and Chelsea are going to get on to this conversation in just a second. But before we do, have you subscribed? If you haven't, let's do that. Do it with me. Let's subscribe together right now. I promise you it'll make it even easier when next week's episode comes out and you already have it easy to click on and get that juicy gossip. Also, if you're not following us at 3 in Motion on Facebook or Instagram already, go ahead and do that as well. Follow so that we can engage, talk, have conversations, make sure that we catch up on what your experiences are and how the episodes are impacting you and the conversations you're having in your life. So, without any further ado, here is the brain dump that is this conversation with Chelsea.
This is a good test. How much do I gotta mix in order to get the color right? I'm gonna just mix all this.
The ramblings of a mad woman, folks.
You recording me? These are private notes! No one must know!
Have you decided what your podcast is gonna be yet?
No, I have not. I still don't know if I'm gonna do one.
Everybody's doing one. Have you heard?
Dude, I have not been able to go 5 consecutive days without someone telling me they're starting a podcast. And so, yeah, it's become a thing. And it's funny because I feel like podcasts felt like an old thing when I found them. I was like, oh, this is like radio. Mm-hmm. Like, this is like
it's
old.
Talk radio.
Yeah, exactly. Like,
yeah.
And then it just kind of blew the fuck up.
Yeah.
Because honestly, I kind of blew up with it as far as like hearing about the Read and all those really just dope black podcasts. But then I got like down with the science podcast and all those, and I like the Joe Rogan podcast and the Tim Ferriss podcast. For me personally, it's like a way to have the conversations that I enjoy having, but I don't get the feedback of them responding. Yeah. I say it I think it.
You get the stimulation.
Yeah, and so I'll have a full-blown conversation with myself in the car with the podcast, and yeah, there's no response. But it still, like, stimulates that conversation.
And you can specifically look for what you want to listen to.
Yeah.
So you know this show is going to make you engaged because it's a topic that you care about, versus sometimes you go out to a social event and you hope that you find people that want to talk about what you want to talk about. Yeah. Podcasts kind of alleviate that, but that is what's missing, is the response to your own experiences and your chime-ins. I still just don't often like listening to podcasts. Yeah. It's still just, I like silence.
Yeah, we receive so much information on a daily basis that I think more of us honestly need to take time where we do have silence. I wrote in my journal, I haven't done it still just because of how addicted I am to learning and to stimulation, that when I took my morning walks that I wouldn't listen to any podcast. No learning, no stimulation, only instrumentals or something like that. I think that silence really allows you to be with yourself and really just kind of put the pieces back, put the pieces back together, dust off the shelf, and just kind of housekeep with you.
Yeah. And I don't think people are often very comfortable with that. That's uncomfortable. The solace and the resting with the self. Because you don't know what you're going to find in there. All that quiet?
Yeah.
What that quiet going to do? It's going to tell my secrets to me. I don't want to know my secrets.
I don't want to know those. I'm going
to keep on trucking in the noise of it all. Because it's safe. It's safe in the noise.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate because it is a false sense of security in the noise. And the quiet will tell you the truth. And it is a truth that is overwhelming but can be handled.
Yeah, it's a double-edged sword because I feel like with my growth, I feel more calm and chill about the world and moving through the space and just being. But I do feel hyper aware to sadness and to all of the things. Like my empathy, I think, like exploded when I became a person who like was really cared about me and loved me. And so now that I'm so aware, it does like hurt more.
Yeah.
Like seeing the world hurts sometimes. And even reconciling that with like everything is everything and it's just like the world is the world, it just still hits you in a different way. So I just feel like when your eyes get open, they get open to both. You know, it's not just all love and light. It's also pain and suffering, because it's all kind of, in our world, it's all mixed together.
Yeah.
You know? It's all just...
It is what it is.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why you can't just point to something, because it's all a stew.
And it is all about perspective. And that's why it has to be, it is what it is, because from one point of view, something can be terrible, but from another point of view, it could be exactly what is needed for something amazing that will bless so many like additional people in the future.
Yeah.
But we can't see that now. And so there's so much doubt in how could this be good when it hurts? How could this be beneficial when it's uncomfortable or unknown? And we don't have the tools or the experience to handle it. How could this be something that could work out?
Yeah.
But that's been what is said about every new thing ever. And we have always evolved. We've always been capable of it. We just didn't like having to do it.
Yeah.
And I think we get butthurt. And I think it is painful. And I think it is scary. And I think when it does hit home, when it hits close to home, it is overwhelming. And it gives you things to think about. But if anything, it gives you the opportunity to choose what you think about versus to just surrender to thinking about what everybody is. Because even I can feel it. Like not just feel it, but I can sense when I'm, especially in public places, the buzz, the vibration of this concern. Like, you can't go anywhere without hearing or seeing the words. And even when you're not hearing or seeing it exactly, you can feel people around you weighted with it, burdened with it, shuffling about with it on the front of their mind. And I don't enjoy being able to pick up on that vibration, because it means that some part of me is relating to that because I'm sensitive to it. And I'm like, I don't enjoy understanding this concern with you. I do empathize, and I do have awareness to it, and I have the cautions, and I'm washing my hands, for 30 seconds, 40 seconds, and often, and, being very mindful. We bought gloves and shit. But it still doesn't change the fact that I think there's more going on than just the little we know about all of this. And I think it might seem too hippy-dippy or naive to think that, but I think this is a energetic manifestation of a concern that's been amongst people or human beings for a while, and that's why it's worldwide. It's not just isolated. But I think this is something that's just kind of taken over everyone, kind of like our experience at the airport. It really reminds me of, like, it's nobody's fault, though it is someone has caused this. This is definitely a man-made, like, this shit is someone's fault. But we're all in this situation now, and we can either riot and, go crazy towards each other, or we can try to figure out some type of solution and structure that can benefit everyone, even if it means some are at a disadvantage, even if it means some flights are missed. Yeah. And so, yeah.
It's like we're a beehive, honestly.
Yeah, we just need to be better at it.
There's a threat to the hive right now, and it's infecting on a scale that we're trying to contain. But with that, there's the panic, I think, doesn't help. But there's just something about it that's just it feels necessary. I don't know.
The panic feels necessary?
Because it's how can you have... I think people aren't comfortable with the fact that anytime this happens, people are going to die.
Yeah.
I think people aren't comfortable with death. And so when people die, they're like, everyone needs to panic.
Yes.
Because we don't understand that just like a beehive, when something comes, there will be a section of us that don't make it.
Yeah.
And people don't like that.
No.
Like, no, we must all make it.
Yeah.
Always.
Or at least we need to know exactly who's not going to make it.
Right.
We don't
exactly.
like not knowing who in advance is going to go down. And that's why we spend so much time focusing on who's the most vulnerable to it.
Right. And also they may have loved ones who are at risk.
Exactly.
So they feel a heightened sense of, oh no.
Yeah.
Like, you know, anything
I think
like
that's
that.
a lot more of the fear than people actually worried about themselves. It's mainly people talking about, you know, being concerned about their parents. And anybody who has, you know, a weaker immune system, essentially, who's more vulnerable to that. I agree with everything you said because I do feel like people are uncomfortable with death. And I, with all the curiosity I have about death, still struggle with being comfortable because I have the duality of being a spiritual being having a human experience. Mm-hmm. So the spiritual part of me is very, very like aware that this is just a thing. This is a thing. Mm-hmm. And me and Dad were having a conversation the other day where it's like literally it's a vehicle. So if you have a car and it's trucking and then it can't truck no more and you get out. When you get out, you left a part of something, but you took the value.
Right.
You took the thing you control.
That car? It was such a good car.
It was a great car. You can be sad about it, but it was a car. It was just a car.
It was a vehicle.
And there is still what made the car operate the way that it did, moving on. Yeah. I want to have more conversations about death.
How do we... Because there's so... People are so different with death. It's like you can't...
And they are, and they can be. Just as different as people want to be about being individuals and living, people can have their own different experiences and thoughts about dying. I just think that not talking about it or...
No.
But
that's the part that most people start with. Like most people hold that like we don't talk about this.
Yeah. And
we can't talk about wanting to die. You can't talk about that. No, we'll send you somewhere.
Yeah, that's not allowed.
Someone.
You have to.
You shouldn't say that.
You shouldn't say that. You shouldn't have thoughts about dying like that. Like,
yeah.
And honestly, if you have been to any actual counselor or therapist, thinking about dying is very natural. It's a normal human thing to do. But I do think that we need to have a society that can communicate about transitions into unknown things without having to completely like shut that off to try to protect ourselves. Because either way it's going to happen. It's inevitable to each and every living thing. And it's a proper thing to happen. It's not a bad guy or a boogeyman. It can be grieved, it can be sad, but it also, because the human part of me realizes how sad it is, the spirit part of me really is just like, it is a thing, and it'll be okay.
Being able to talk about death freely just kind of allows a more open space for exactly what you're talking about. And so I think there's a lot of people in that zone that don't actually want to commit it, but need to talk about things that are related to that, or even they're just having thoughts about that and aren't sure if they're the only one having those thoughts.
Yeah.
And they can't talk about those thoughts,
mm-hmm.
and people shut them up every time they do start talking about those thoughts, and they can't tell strangers about those thoughts. That's inappropriate, and so it's just like, what do I do with these thoughts?
Exactly. Other than ruminate on them and to hyper focus on them. And so that's why it's so interesting that sex and death are so taboo when everybody, maybe not everybody's there are a lot of people who don't have sex in their lifetime. Honestly, not according to the percentage who do have sex in their lifetime, but death and sex is something that affects the majority of us. Yeah. And it's something that's not allowed to be talked about. I find it so fascinating that we don't trust each other to talk about it. We trust each other to do it. We trust each other to participate in these things, or to know that you're going to have to let one another go because transition and passing on is going to happen inevitably. But it does fascinate me that we just can't talk about those things. And that's why I like talking about them. Because I even though sometimes it makes me dreadfully uncomfortable, I'm open to being uncomfortable just to kind of hear other experiences and thoughts, because they can be very interesting and gives me something to self-reflect on.
As young people, we don't really have a sense of community to each other. Mm-hmm. And we may have it on, some people have it on that scale, and some people don't. I personally feel that most people don't. And I think that's important why we're not as happy.
I think that's also why people struggle so much when they are going through issues with their friends, or if they feel like their friends' lives are taking a different path than theirs, or, they're growing apart, because your tribe really does kind of get woven into how you self-regulate yourself. And so when people are unavailable, it's hard.
Yeah. You gotta figure out a different move.
Another coping mechanism. Yeah, another distraction also.
Yeah, we're such communal creatures. And I think, like, with social media, it gives a false sense of community. It gives a false sense of, like, we're connected and everything. And, like, you do find awesome connections and meet in person with, like, some people on social media. But I think a lot of it stands in the place of, I think a lot of us spend more time at home just kind of scrolling. And then every now and again we'll go to an event. And I'm not saying I hate that. Like, honestly, I'm pretty lazy. But
I don't think we want it to be this lazy.
Yeah.
I think we're this lazy because this is what we've become after generations of people who busted their ass and they wanted to live this life. They thought they thought this is what they wanted.
Yeah.
But I don't think this is what they wanted. I think everything in moderation, and we've taken luxury and comfort to a new extreme.
Right.
And, like, if you know anything about the study of the blue zones, the areas in the world where people are living the longest, it's because they are active on a daily basis. They eat meat sometimes, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, not a day, but a week. And they're community based. They're close with their communities. They make time to break bread together, to have a glass of wine together. And these people are living active lives. They're washing dishes by hand. They're tending to fields. They're moving around far into their 90s and into their early hundreds because of this. Right. And so we're lethargic because we've been groomed to be, but I don't think this is what we wanted. It's like, I think that's why when someone starts working out, they seem so different, because they're pursuing something, they're grooming something, they're building something that they're proud of. And so not only are the muscles tightening so their posture gets better, but also how they feel about themselves is an aura shift. And so that gets stronger, and that's palpable, and that's attractive. And so it's not just the physical look, but it's the energetic look that's even more attractive on that.
Right. So. What else have you been thinking about?
My honest answer is quitting my job. Quitting my 9 to 5, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's what I've really been thinking about.
Yeah. I think I'm realizing more and more how much I enjoy having time versus anything else. Mm-hmm. And money obviously is necessary for all of the things we do. And so, I feel like I would enjoy work so much more if I was working because, if money was taken care of.
Yeah.
I was just working because I was working. Because then you could work on exactly what you care about. And so, yeah, it's such a weird pull, because I would love to just dive full in to just being, and stuff like that. And I'm sure you would love to just, do what you're trying to do, but until it starts providing coinage.
Yeah. I think what really matters to me at this point is to feel like I am actively doing what I'm led to do. Right. And I feel actively led to let people know that they're loved. I feel actively led to help people make secure attachments. I feel actively led to reassure people that while relationships can be scary, while relationships can hurt you, you can also heal in relationships. You also need to heal your relationship with yourself, and value that as much as any external relationship. And I think I used to feel like I got to do more of that at my 9 to 5, and I don't feel like I get to do that at the same capacity or in the same way, and it just feels like it's getting time to move on.
Yeah.
And the only urgency is because it literally feels like being pushed out because of shifts that are happening and other changes that are almost letting you know, like, hey, this is not meant to be comfortable. Right. Don't get complacent. Yeah. Hey, this is getting a little bit uncertain. This is getting a little weird. This is getting a little murky.
I think that is so just like the universe being like, hey, we know what we're doing, and you're uncomfortable, and that's important for you to realize.
Yeah. What are you learning about that?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like most of us just get frustrated. But that uncomfortability, I feel like, is important for us to first sit with, because sometimes it is just a fleeting thing, or if it's, I think it's important to just kind of like meditate on it. But I think there is a certain point where you do need to move on. And it's no, bad to anything. It's just like you need something different. We as creatures can't just kind of keep vibing with the same thing. I think we yearn to have novelty in the way that we just like we want to keep growing in a certain type of way.
Yeah.
We want to keep growing in this path, and it turns out the path that I was on with this no longer aligns with the new path that I'm following. And so that disconnect, that discord, we can feel that, and it feels uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And so we just gotta pay attention to that, and honestly, you gotta figure out what next move feels more in line with that person that we're being pulled to be.
And that's scary. And I think
very.
I think people are always concerned about, I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to strive for something that I'm not completely 100% sure about. Because what'll happen, I'll end up having to come crawling back with my tail tucked. And it's like, fuck all that. Like, honestly, yes, you want to secure enough to be able to provide for yourself realistically. But then outside of that scheme, any other preparation is just feeding into the doubt. Yeah. And it's just reassuring you, almost like if you're trying to decide whether to dive off of a diving board. If you linger back too long, you will convince yourself to climb down the stairs and get right back off. But if you get up there and you're like, shit, this is terrifying, and you go ahead and do it because you're up there, if you give enough speed and momentum, you don't think too much about it, and you jump, you'll be down in the water before you know it, and you'll make the decisions you need to get out of the pool from there.
Right.
But don't hold yourself and not jump.
There's a general sense, I feel like, that people think that if I make this move and it doesn't work out, I won't be all right.
Yeah.
And I think most people would be surprised to realize that you will be all right. You will figure something out. Most people, I think, have enough agency to figure something out.
But they don't want to be uncomfortable.
Right.
That's what it really comes down to. I think people are just afraid of having to lose comfort just because we've been groomed, like we talked about, to be like this is a luxury. Like being able to watch Netflix all weekend, that's a luxury. You don't have laundry to be washing by hand and hanging up. You don't got, dishes to be washing by hand. You don't have meals to be preparing. Like, there are things that we technically could be doing that would help us later on, that would benefit us physically and nutritionally, but no. We choose to do whatever we can to remain comfortable, and that's fast food, that's, just cliff notes of life, when really we could actively be pursuing our greater selves if we could get over ourselves.
Yeah. It's probably a part personality, but also just like the way I think we're kind of domesticated. Mm-hmm. Like, we're not built towards... Our society doesn't build us towards having resilience towards, much pain, all that. It tells you to avoid it. It has, we just are set in that. And so, like, in school, you're not taught how to go through a changing process of, like, all right, something's wrong, let's fix it, blah, blah, blah. It's just like, no, we have tests, did wrong on the test. All right, the tests are wrong. They don't, they'll tell you the answer, yeah, but we don't go through like the process exactly. And so it's just like our whole thing is set up in a way that doesn't really allow that openness,
Yeah. And that's where it gets so frustrating, because people are living very caged lives, inner caged lives, because they think it's naive to dream bigger, and they think that pursuing that, it's just not worth it. And it's not necessarily always worth it for the financial gain. Sometimes there are things more important than a financial gain, though. Sometimes there's things you learn about yourself when you take a chance on yourself that you would never learn, that you would never get to value and know about yourself if you didn't step out there. And so it might involve a pay cut, but gaining something of virtue about yourself. And some people are like, no, I'll keep the money, thank you. And it's like, that's okay. That's your experience. But for those who are tempted and on the cusp of like, but I do play with the idea of being something else, doing something else, that it's more unorthodox or not traditional and my family probably wouldn't accept it. But if it's what you have to spend most of your week doing,
yeah,
like
fucking 60-70% of your life doing.
Yeah, like how can we settle for doing anything but what we feel led to do? And I get it. Like previous generations did not have this luxury, and I am so thankful for everybody who made it possible for me to sit here and to fix my mouth to say something like that. Like, I think I should have the right to only do what I want to do. It is a millennial, like, that is the millennial slogan.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Like, I don't have to do this
wasn't corporate. That the point? You worked hard so we didn't have to. We don't have to. So now we can think about these things. Like, we're always going to have problems. I think what they want is, like, now you'll be happy. But humans aren't happy. Like, in general, like, we're happy-ish. But, like, I think, in general, our minds seek problems to solve. Yeah. And so there will always be a complaint of a generation.
And we're animals. And so our instincts are built to have us looking for concern, danger, threats. And so we are always worrying. We can't be satisfied because we're always, especially the female species, we are like wired brain-wise to be worriers. And so worrying warriors. But it's so important for us to get a hold of that, or to be aware of that, and to become even more emotional intelligent, just so that we can soften some of the chaos that goes on inside of us.
Yeah.
It's not easy being a person, especially if you think you're just a person. Like, I'm all good with whatever people believe and stuff, but it's so much more fun to believe that, like, I'm an energetic ball of the universe's best floating about, just having a experience that's labeled as human for a little
3 pico mics, whatever seconds
those,
are in
whatever
there.
That could be. But I'm just like, I think it's so much more fun to think all of that. I mean, if we don't know, at least give ourselves an elaborate story. Yeah. Yeah, Well, any final words? Any parting words to this rambling mess that this conversation has been?
No, I think that's about all I got for y'all.
Yeah.
So I don't think it was rambling at all. I think it was very beautifully
I think it was great, but I think it was definitely rambling, because it was just a jumbled up masterpiece of a collection of conversation. Okay, folks. Well, thank you for tuning in to this episode of Energy in Motion, where me and Chels just kind of like brain dumped on you what has been floating around in our heads over the past couple of days of spring break this week. And so be safe out there, be clean, wash your hands. If you don't feel well, hang out at home, don't make a big deal out of it, chill out, we're gonna get through this. And in the meantime, as always, Energy in Motion family, you get to feel whatever you may feel, and you will always deserve to heal. Peace.
Peace, y'all.